The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom release. I cannot describe in words how impactful Ocarina of Time was to me as a kid, how intensely I got sucked into that world to the point that I even wrote some bad fanfic set in that universe back in the days. When Majora's Mask came out, I was almost bursting with excitement, until I was actually able to play it, and was again totally blown away by a unique experience. When I played Breath of the Wild, I felt nothing. It's not that I hated the game, it was even enjoyable up to a point, but I just can't seem to get as excited about it as many others. And it seems to be missing everything I loved about Zelda. I'm also not a huge fan of open world games in general, and to this date, the only one that I think pulled this off well is Witcher 3, where every side quest feels meaningful. So I wish everyone a ton of fun with Tears of the Kingdom. But I feel no particular urge to play it right now, given that it appears to largely copy Bop's formula from what I've read. Maybe I will pick it up at some later point.
I think as a kid is the operative phrase here. Nothing will ever live up to that nostalgia. That's not to discount the criticisms or feel you get from the game, but it's worth noting that nothing lives up to our childhood favorites.
I caved and bought a Switch last week. It's the best tech purchase I've made in years. The games on it are fun, the versatility of the Joy-Cons is incredible, and the loading speed is a breath of fresh air. My main console is an original PS4. I upgraded to PS5 last year and returned it. It's just more of the same. Huge game downloads, huge update downloads, a huge console, and long load times. And to be honest, I didn't see a lot of difference in terms of graphics. If you want to play super realistic games, then Nintendo doesn't seem to be the way to go, but if you want to have fun and don't care about frame rate, whatever other performance metric people complain about, the Switch is amazing.
I've heard the Steam Deck emulates Switch games like Zelda Boat much better than the Switch. And it's not much more expensive either.
Did you get a chance to check out Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn? I have been gaming for a few decades now, and this is the most impressive technical achievement I have seen in a game. For me, everything else pales in comparison after this experience. The studio develops their own game engine, Decima.
I was listening to a gaming podcast last week, and they were talking about how this release was pirated and available for the last week or so on torrents. That in itself wasn't surprising, but the interesting point they talked about is that the game is much more enjoyable when played on PC, with an emulated copy, because modern gaming PC hardware is much smoother and higher resolution than the stock Switch. It really makes me think Nintendo has an untapped market here to sell a little box you plug into your PC that plays Switch games, interfaces with their controllers, etc. They've done oddball stuff like the SNES Game Boy Player and GameCube GBA Player add-ons in the past. It feels like there would be people willing to pay to properly play Switch games on their gaming PCs.
It really makes me think Nintendo has an untapped market here to sell a little box you plug into your PC that plays Switch games, interfaces with their controllers, etc. They've done oddball stuff like the SNES Game Boy Player and GameCube GBA Player add-ons in the past. It feels like there would be people willing to pay to properly play Switch games on their gaming PCs. It seems unlikely they would be willing to let go of control like that. With all their oddball stuff, you are still largely within the Nintendo ecosystem. They also probably don't want to deal with the piracy problem on PC, considering they already deal with it on their relatively locked-down consoles. For better or for worse, Nintendo also likes to really control the experience you get playing games on their platforms. It would probably not be a great look for them to have to deal with thousands of customers that are trying to run their games on hardware older than a Switch and complaining that it's a terrible experience. Yeah, the existing hardware is underpowered, but it's uniformly underpowered, and that's worth quite a bit too. I think for Nintendo, the more prudent solution would be to release an updated Switch with some more powerful hardware that's fully backwards compatible with the existing Switch library. It would be very par for the course for them, and assuage most of the complaints about the Switch being underpowered.
People complaining about the Switch being underpowered are expecting PS5 level performance on a mobile device. Even if a new console would be twice as fast, they still would be disappointed. It's perfectly possible to create innovative, and, most important, fun games on something as powerful as the Switch.
People complaining about the Switch being underpowered are expecting PS5 level performance on a mobile device. I mean, the SoC on the Switch was long in the tooth at launch. It's almost exactly the same hardware as in the Tiger Shield that came out 2 years prior, but Nintendo clocks it down to 1 GHz, about half the speed of the Shield. There's some legitimate complaints that it's a dog-slow system because of that. For instance, this new Zelda is frame locked to 20 FPS in some areas apparently.
The Switch combines lower-powered A57, a Society from 2012, on a 20 nanometers process, with a Maxwell GPU, 9+ years old at this point. Honestly, this is the time to start working on a Switch successor. They could easily more than double the current compute capabilities, while keeping the same or lower power envelope. That doesn't even count the untapped bonuses from much higher memory speeds. I would instantly buy this. We would be looking at mobile machines more powerful than a PS4 Pro, which is imho more than enough for the type of console. Nintendo doesn't even need to build it on the latest state-of-the-art TSMC process. Even the 5 nanometers should be enough.
I would instantly buy this. Why? Will it make the games more fun to play? Does it enable more fun games? I don't see it. Nintendo has always thrived on underpowered hardware.
A lot of games get limited to 30 FPS, and even dip lower on the Switch, which makes them unplayable for me. I don't care about graphics at all. I'd rather play in some extremely low poly low texture mode, at 60 FPS, ideally higher, than at 30 FPS. If they released a new version with a 120Hz display that could actually run games at 120Hz, I'd be ecstatic. I don't even mind the 720p resolution. It's fine on such a small screen in my opinion.
Nintendo are way too control freak for this, not to mention fearful of piracy and emulation. They don't want that money.
Like it or not, apparently Switch piracy is a thing, so this doesn't really change much for their current situation. But it does give people who want to do things the right way an avenue to do so. I kind of think of it like high-end CAD software, and such that ships a physical dongle in order to use the software. Nintendo can sell hardware to help ensure its legitimate use of their emulation software.
Has Nintendo ever talked about how they do software development? Can we all drop the thousands of books that have been written about software engineering in general, and just figure out what they do? Game aside, the reviews have been pointing out how the game performs well after day one patch, and is not pestered with bugs, which is an impressive feat for such an open-world game where most things are able to interact with everything else.
Apparently the game is just 16 gigabytes and runs seamlessly on a decade-old hardware, with no loading screens between game areas. How does Nintendo pull it off?
Mechanical sympathy. Rather than designing a game on a PC to take arbitrary advantage of modern tech and then trying to cram it down onto a more limited console platform, Nintendo asked at design time what the most interesting things they can do are that would work perfectly within the constraints of the platform. And then do that. And Nintendo engineers can have perfect knowledge of the constraints of the platform, because when they built the platform, 2, it's the only platform they ever code for, never porting to anything else, and 3, for late-in-generation titles, they have been developing for it for years already, while also doing platform SDK support for every third-party development studio. Oh, and besides that, because they design each platform initially specifically to work well for the types of games they want to make. This goes all the way back to the Famicom, which has hardware PPU registers that were specifically implemented clearly to make the launch title port of Donkey Kong extremely easy to code.
And also Nintendo has a long history of developing games for outdated hardware. Their consoles were never that powerful.
With exception of N64.
The better question you should be asking is, why does everyone else need 300 gigabytes of disk space that transfers at over 7 GBs, 32 CPU cores at 6 GHz, a video card worth $3,000, and RAM sizes measured in gigabytes with 3 digits, just for a fucking game? At some point I have to wonder if the reason we have so much computing power is so we can use that computing power.
BOTW was almost perfect, but the weapon braking system left me so tired of managing it. What a constant distraction. I get that they wanted to encourage experimentation, but they overtuned it, and it became a chore. If TODK has the same system, I'm returning it.
I slowly grinded my way through BOTW over the last years, every few months a few steps forward, then getting bored. Left the plateau, tamed a horse, and have now the full picture of the princess and a long sleep. Nice, but still little curiosity, what happens next? I wish I could feel what everyone else seems to enjoy.
I've attempted to play through BODW a couple times and ended up giving up to 2 weapons breaking, endless shrines, generally rather boring gameplay. The hype here is fascinating. I guess nostalgia and liking what everyone else says they like is a powerful thing. I just finished Horizon Zero Dawn, which I found to be a far superior open-world game. The graphics alone are jaw-dropping, the gameplay is exciting, quite an incredible production. I'm curious if any of the Zelda fans here have played it.